Hello, Hamish here from mortgagesonline.co.nz. I'm here with Miriam Bell,
Hi, Hamish.
who writes a lot. Well, she's the editor of the New Zealand Property Investor magazine. And we're going to talk about where house prices are
Yep.
and where they might be going.
Yes,
Right.
particularly in Auckland, because after quite a lengthy period in the doldrums, so as to speak, Auckland seems to be looking a bit more positive for those interested in the market.
Yes, and it's been 3 years, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. It would be almost
It's been
4.
Oh, really? Latest stats out from REINZ. Out of Auckland is also moving.
Yep.
But I think you mentioned on one of your articles that has it been about a 2.4% growth or something?
For Auckland, the median house price has been flat for a long time, as people probably know. But in the latest REINZ data, it's up marginally by 0.8 year on year.
Yep.
So since last October. But since September, it's up by 2.4, which is quite a
Just
big
considerable.
jump, given what it was like prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, sales data has also jumped. I mean, it's spring, and traditionally it's a time of year when that happens.
Yep.
But given Auckland has been so stagnant, I think it's quite interesting. It follows, there's been a pattern in previous data which suggests that there's some sort of more activity going on in the market, and that's of interest because Auckland is a driver still of the national market, so it makes a difference. Broadly.
Yeah, and I think you also talked a little bit about the actual building consents.
I did. Again, Auckland is seeing a lot of consents. They're at almost historically high levels. They're at levels not seen since the mid-70s, which is generally considered to be the highest sort of building period in modern history. And now they're almost at the peak level of 1974, in Auckland in particular. And so thinking that would translate into building, I think it does, up to a point. So you'd think that would impact on the supply going forward.
What kind of houses are going to be coming on stream?
Well, there's a big increase in multi-unit dwellings. So you're looking at apartments and townhouses, terraced houses, that sort of thing. So smaller dwellings, but ones which allow for higher density building.
Mm-hmm.
In line with the Auckland Unitary Plan, which again is something Auckland needs.
And so I guess you would expect maybe the prices aren't going to be amazingly booming for those smaller, maybe land sizes of 200 square metres or less maybe.
Yeah, I think I was talking to Calvin Davidson from CoreLogic the other day, and he thinks that, again, positive signs in the Auckland market, but in his view it's more of a return to normalised trends. So rather than seeing a big boom period as we have done, in the relatively recent past, you're more likely to see sort of, the prices bubbling along nicely but not excessively. What it does suggest is that we're not likely to see a big drop in prices as people may have been speculating, in the mould of Sydney or Melbourne.
Yep.
So I think that probably is quite a change. I think that sort of doomsday collapse scenario, unless there's some catastrophic global economic meltdown, is less likely.
Yeah, especially with the interest rates being so low. I mean,
Absolutely.
the OCR is they were expecting it to go down, but it's been held, but it's still fairly low when you look at interest rates.
Record low, and I think most economists are sort of expecting a cut to the OCR probably early next year. So whether that translates into further drops in interest rates, I guess, remains to be seen. I think it's my understanding that the market's priced in some of those projected.
Yes.
That's
right. There's some commentary about interest rates
down.
There's some commentary about interest rates maybe even going up or less of a discount just in the coming month because of the no change in OCR stance.
I think moving forward, you've still got to look at these are historically low interest rates. We've all heard about how in the 80s people were paying 20-something% in interest. You can't really go past that. It's, if you're looking for a good condition, that is one.
And I think it's kind of reached that sweet spot in a way for investors as well. And I think there's a bit more investor interest because
yes, there is,
the interest rate is now, like at 3.5% or below, is kind of at where a lot of gross yields are for rents in Auckland, in kind of slightly better or averagey suburbs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of at that point where you can buy a house, and it's the tenant is paying pretty much most of the costs.
Yep, potentially. I mean, I guess it depends on the price point that you go into, as you say. But again, both the most recent mortgage lending data from the Reserve Bank and CoreLogic's buyer classification figures indicate that there is a certain return of investors to the market. Again, not like was seen a few years back, but there definitely seems to be renewed interest, which is interesting given ongoing changes around property management, essentially, for landlords, which is creating some tension.
Yes, and I think, and you've written a bit about that. I have
written a bit about that, but I just think, there was some thoughts that maybe there'd be a bit of an exodus of landlords from the market because maybe there's a changing of the guards, I don't know. But it doesn't look at this point, going by the lending figures, that investors are dropping further out of the market.
No, I think they've kind of digested a lot of, like the Healthy Homes Bill came out and it probably not as bad as people expected. There's still the tenancy stuff coming.
That's right. I mean, the Healthy Homes minimum standards were pretty clearly signposted for a while, and there's a few years grace. I do understand that costs can mount, but again, it does add value to your property if you're making those improvements, so something to think about. I think as far as I can see, the potential tenancy law changes are more of a concern for many investors, but we don't know what's going to happen there yet.
Yeah, it is open for debate as well right now. So, well, thank you for that, Miriam, and
thank you, Hamish.
Thank you for watching. Hopefully that was kind of interesting for you. I'll just play this little clip as well for you, and cool.